Hello, welcome to Sleepy History Past. Tonight we drift gently into the quiet, timeless story of cats in history, from their ancient beginnings as wild companions to the soft, purring presences that share our homes today. Let your breathing slow, your thoughts soften, as we wander through the long, gentle path these graceful creatures have walked beside humanity. There is no rush here, only the calm unfolding of facts, one after another, like stars appearing slowly in a darkening sky. The story begins far back in the cradle of early human life, long before cities rose or pharaohs ruled. Around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, in the fertile lands known as the Fertile Crescent, places we now call parts of the modern Near East, humans were taking their first steady steps toward settled farming. They planted grains, stored harvests, and built simple homes. With those stores came small creatures, mice and rats drawn to the seeds. And where rodents gathered, another animal followed quietly, the African wildcat, Felis sylvestris libica, a slender, sandy-colored hunter with sharp eyes and a wary nature. These wildcats were not tamed at first by force or captivity. They came of their own accord, drawn by the easy prey near human fields and granaries. Humans noticed how the cats kept the pests in check, protecting the precious food that meant survival through winter. In return, the cats found steady meals and perhaps a measure of safety near the warmth of fires and dwellings. This was the beginning of a quiet partnership, one built on mutual benefit rather than command. It is often said that cats domesticated themselves, choosing proximity to people because it suited their solitary, efficient way of living. One of the earliest signs of this closeness comes from the island of Cyprus, where archaeologists uncovered a burial from around 9,500 years ago. A human had been laid to rest with care, and beside them rested the skeleton of a cat, positioned deliberately, not as food or accident, but as companion. The cat had been brought to the island, carried across water by boat, showing that already humans valued these animals enough to transport them. This small grave speaks softly of affection, of a bond forming across species in the hush of prehistory. As farming spread, so did the cats. They moved with people along trade paths and rivers, their paws padding silently behind grain sacks and campfires. Genetic studies reveal that all modern domestic cats trace back to that single lineage of Near Eastern wildcats. Only a handful of genes separate today's house cat from its ancient wild ancestor, perhaps 10 or so, enough for subtle changes in temperament and appearance, but not so many that the essential nature shifted. Cats remained hunters at heart, independent yet willing to share space. By around 4,000 years ago, the relationship deepened in the land of Egypt. Here, cats found not just tolerance, but reverence. The Nile's fertile banks grew abundant crops and granaries overflowed. Rodents remained a constant threat, but cats proved masterful guardians. Egyptians watched them stalk cobras and scorpions too, creatures that could bring death with a single strike. In a world where danger hid in shadows, cats seemed almost magical, swift, fearless, and precise. This admiration grew into worship. The goddess Bastet emerged as one of the most beloved deities, protector of home, fertility, joy, music, and family. She was often shown as a woman with a gentle cat's head, or sometimes fully as a seated cat, calm and watchful. Temples rose in her honor, especially in the city of Bubastes, the house of Bastet. Pilgrims traveled far to celebrate her festivals with dancing, singing, and offerings. Cats lived in those sacred spaces, roaming freely, fed and cared for by priests. Killing a cat, even by accident, became a grave offense in ancient Egypt, punishable by death in some periods. Families mourned their cats as deeply as kin, shaving eyebrows in grief and holding funerals. Cats were mummified with care, wrapped in linen, sometimes adorned with tiny jewelry of gold or beads. Mouse mummies were placed beside them for the afterlife journey. Vast cemeteries held hundreds of thousands of these cat mummies, a testament to how central they were to daily life and belief. In art, cats appeared on tomb walls, in statues, on jewelry, always poised, elegant, eternal. Bastet was not fierce like her lioness sister Sekhmet. She was nurturing, joyful, a guardian of the hearth. Yet she carried a protective edge. Her claws could defend against evil spirits or illness. Women especially sought her blessing for safe childbirth and home harmony. Cats became living symbols of these qualities, purring softly in homes as embodiments of divine favor. As Egypt's influence spread through trade along the Mediterranean, cats traveled too. Phoenician merchants and Greek visitors carried them aboard ships, where they hunted rats that could ruin cargo or chew ropes. By the time Egypt joined the Roman Empire around the 1st century before our era, cats had become familiar across the region. Romans admired their grace and utility, allowing them to wander temples and villas. The spread accelerated. Cats reached Britain possibly with Roman legions, padding along roads built for empire. In those early centuries, cats remained close to their wild roots. They were not bred into strange shapes or sizes yet. They were simply effective, quiet companions who chose to stay near humans. Their purrs soothed after long days, their presence warded off loneliness in growing settlements. People began to see them as bringers of good fortune, their independent ways a reminder that some alliances are gentle, unspoken, and freely given. When Egypt became part of the vast Roman Empire around 31 years before our common era, cats found new paths opening before them. The Romans, ever practical and admiring of anything useful or elegant, welcomed these animals into their world. No longer confined to the sacred temples along the Nile, cats began to appear in villas, forums, and granaries across the Mediterranean. Roman merchants and soldiers, moving grain and goods along well-built roads and busy ports, often carried cats aboard their vessels. These ships, laden with wheat from Egypt's fertile fields, were prime targets for rodents that could spoil entire cargoes or gnaw through vital ropes and sails. A cat's presence became a simple, effective safeguard, its quiet hunts preserving the empire's lifeblood of trade. In Roman homes, cats were not yet pampered as they would become in later centuries, but they earned respect for their independence and skill. Mosaics from Pompeii and other buried cities show slender felines in domestic scenes, perched on ledges, watching over kitchens, or simply lounging in the sunlit atriums. Writers of the time mentioned them sparingly, yet with a tone of familiarity. The poet Martial, in his epigrams, alluded to cats as creatures that prowled rooftops and chased shadows. Some Romans even linked cats to the goddess Libertas, the embodiment of freedom, portraying her with a cat at her feet, a symbol of untamed spirit that refused to be fully leashed. As the empire expanded northward into Gaul, Britain, and along the Rhine, cats padded behind the legions. Archaeological traces, small bones in Roman forts and settlements, tell of their arrival, often via the same trade routes that brought olive oil, wine, and spices. By the 4th century of our era, cats had become widespread in Europe, their tabby patterns and varied coats beginning to reflect subtle adaptations to cooler climates and new prey. They guarded monasteries where monks copied manuscripts by candlelight, keeping rats from chewing precious parchment. In rural farmsteads, they protected stored harvests, ensuring families had enough through harsh winters. Yet the Roman view of cats remained balanced, practical guardians rather than divine beings. They were allowed to roam freely in cities, their soft footfalls a common sound on cobblestone streets. Children might toss bits of fish to stray cats near markets, and elders told tales of cats foretelling weather changes by the way they curled near hearths or sought shelter before storms. Sailors, in particular, grew fond of them. A cat aboard ship was seen as a bringer of good fortune, its keen senses detecting distant lights or shifts in the wind that humans might miss. Some crews believed a cat's refusal to board foretold disaster, while its calm presence promised safe voyages. This seafaring bond deepened as centuries passed. Phoenician traders had carried cats earlier, but under Roman influence the practice became routine. Viking longships raiding and trading from the 8th to 11th centuries took cats along the Baltic and North Sea routes. Genetic studies of ancient remains show Near Eastern lineages appearing in distant ports around this time. These hardy felines hunted in the holds, their survival mirroring the resilience of the sailors themselves. A cat might curl in a sailor's hammock for warmth during icy nights, offering quiet companionship amid the creak of timbers and roar of waves. By the early medieval period, As the Western Roman world gave way to kingdoms and feudal lands, cats settled into village life across Europe. In monasteries and manors, they were valued for the same reasons as before, controlling vermin that threatened food stores and spread disease. Manuscripts from the time occasionally depict cats in margins, chasing mice across illuminated pages or sleeping beside scribes. One charming note from a 9th century Irish monk reads of his cat Pangur Bán, whose joyful hunts mirrored the monk's own pursuit of knowledge, a gentle poem celebrating shared purpose in quiet hours. In Asia, separate threads wove into the story. While European cats descended mainly from the African wildcat lineage, parts of China and Japan welcomed their own felines earlier, perhaps from trade along the Silk Road. By the Tang dynasty in the 7th to 10th centuries, cats appeared in poetry and art as symbols of elegance and mystery. Japanese folklore spoke of Nico-mata, cats with forked tails that gained supernatural wisdom with age, while in China they guarded silk warehouses from rodents that could destroy precious threads. Buddhist temples often housed cats, believing their calm presence aided meditation and warded off evil spirits. Through all these lands, cats remained largely unchanged in essence, solitary hunters who chose human proximity when it suited them. Their purrs soothed weary travelers, their eyes reflected moonlight in dark barns, and their soft weight on laps brought unspoken comfort. No grand decrees forced this bond, it grew slowly, like moss on ancient stone, through shared need and quiet affection. As nights lengthen in our telling, let these images linger. A Roman galley gliding under stars with a cat perched on the rail, a Viking warrior sharing dried fish with his ship's companion, a medieval scribe pausing to stroke a warm form curled by ink and quill. The world turned, empires rose and fell, yet cats moved through it all with the same unhurried grace. In the High Middle Ages, from roughly the 11th to the 14th centuries, cats found their place woven deeply into the fabric of European daily life. Villages and towns multiplied, their wooden homes clustered around stone churches and castles. Grain silos and pantries filled with the bounty of harvests, drawing rodents in ever greater numbers. Cats, now fully integrated into households, became almost indispensable. Farm cats roamed barns and stables, their litters growing wilder in haylofts, yet always returning to the warmth of human hearths when nights turned cold. In many rural areas, a cat was considered part of the household inventory, much like a cow or a plow, its value measured in the protection it offered against loss of food stores. Urban life brought new roles. The growing merchant cities of Italy, France, and the Low Countries, cats patrolled warehouses filled with spices, cloth, and dried fish imported from distant ports. Guild records occasionally mention payments to mouse or cats, small stipends of milk or scraps to keep them loyal to a particular shop or granary. Children in narrow streets learned early to respect these animals. A sudden swipe from a cornered cat taught caution, while a gentle purr earned smiles and gentle strokes from passing hands. Art from this era captures their quiet dignity. Illuminated manuscripts, those painstakingly decorated books of prayer and learning, frequently include cats in the margins. One famous example from a 14th century book of hours shows a gray tabby batting at a butterfly, its tail curled in concentration, while a monk below continues his careful script. Another depicts a cat curled asleep on a windowsill, bathed in golden light filtering through leaded glass. These tiny scenes remind us that even in the solemn work of copying scripture, people found joy in the simple antics of their feline companions. Yet not all perceptions remained kind. As the 14th century deepened, the shadow of the Black Death fell across Europe. In the panic and superstition that followed the plague's arrival in 1347, some began to associate cats, especially black ones, with witchcraft and evil. The Church, seeking explanations for the unimaginable suffering, sometimes pointed to supposed pacts with the devil. Cats, with their nocturnal habits and independent nature, fell under suspicion. In certain regions, during waves of hysteria, cats were rounded up and burned alongside accused women and men. These episodes were sporadic and regional, not universal. Many villages continued to cherish their mousers without fear, but the association lingered in folklore, planting seeds for later superstitions. Despite such dark interludes, the practical value of cats endured. Monasteries and convents, repositories of knowledge through turbulent times, kept cats to safeguard their libraries. A single rodent infestation could destroy irreplaceable volumes, thus cats were quietly protected. One touching record from a Swiss abbey in the late 14th century notes the burial of a beloved cat named Muri beneath the cloister walkway, with a small stone marker simply reading Muri, faithful guardian of books. Across the Islamic world during the same centuries, cats enjoyed far gentler esteem. The Prophet Mohammed is said to have cherished a cat named Musa, who once fell asleep on his robe. Rather than disturb her, he cut off the sleeve and left her in peace. This story, passed down through generations, encouraged kindness toward cats in Muslim households. Mosques and madrasas often sheltered strays, believing their presence brought baraka, blessings. In Cairo, Damascus, and Baghdad, cats roamed courtyards and rooftops freely, fed by the community and admired for their cleanliness and grace. Persian miniature paintings from the period show cats reclining beside scholars or playing near fountains, symbols of tranquility amid intellectual pursuit. In Japan, the Kamakura and Muromachi periods, roughly 12th to 16th centuries, saw cats rise in cultural importance. Initially brought from China for rodent control in silk warehouses, they soon appeared in aristocratic homes and temples. Samurai occasionally kept them as companions, appreciating their calm demeanor during long hours of meditation or preparation. Folklore grew rich with tales: the Bake Nico, shape-shifting cats that could stand on hind legs and speak, or the Manki Nico, the beckoning cat whose raised paw later became a symbol of good fortune in shops and homes. Though some stories carried a mischievous edge, the overall view remained affectionate. Cats were seen as bringers of prosperity and protectors against misfortune. By the 15th century, as Europe edged toward the Renaissance, cats began appearing in domestic portraits and still lifes. Wealthier households bred them selectively for color and temperament, though extreme variations were still rare. A tortoiseshell cat might curl at the feet of a lady in a velvet gown, or a sleek black one perch on a scholar's desk, watching ink dry on fresh parchment. These images reflect a growing sentimentality. Cats were no longer merely useful, they were cherished for the quiet joy they brought to human lives. Through plague, war, and shifting faiths, cats adapted with their characteristic resilience. They hunted in the ruins of abandoned villages, curled beside survivors in makeshift shelters, and padded along the edges of battlefields, drawn by the scent of discarded rations. Their independence allowed them to thrive where other animals faltered, while their willingness to accept affection ensured they never strayed too far from human warmth. Let these centuries settle softly around you now, the flicker of candlelight on fur, the scratch of quill on vellum interrupted by a gentle purr, the distant toll of a cathedral bell answered by a cat's silent leap onto a sill. History moved forward in tumult, but cats walked its quieter paths, steady and undemanding. Breathe slowly, let the weight of time ease from your shoulders. The story continues to unfold, carrying us toward oceans crossed, discoveries made, and the gentle domestication that brought cats fully into our modern world. The age of sail, beginning in earnest during the 15th and 16th centuries, marked one of the most significant chapters in the global spread of cats. European powers, Portugal, Spain, England, the Netherlands, launched vessels across uncharted oceans in search of trade routes, spices, gold, and new lands. Every ship that crossed the Atlantic, rounded the Cape of Good Hope, or ventured into the Pacific carried cats in its hold. Rodents were an ever-present peril on long voyages. They devoured provisions, gnawed through rigging, spread disease, and could sink a vessel by weakening wooden hulls from within. A good ship's cat was worth more than its weight in silver. Sailors treated their feline crewmates with a mixture of superstition and affection. A cat that stayed calm during rough seas was seen as a sign of favorable winds. One that hid or meowed incessantly might foretell trouble. When a cat chose a particular sailor to curl beside at night, that man felt marked by good luck. Stories passed from deck to deck of cats that warned of leaks by pawing at damp planks, or that guided lost ships toward land by staring intently at distant horizons. In the cramped, swaying world below decks, a cat's purr became one of the few soothing sounds amid the groan of timbers and the lash of waves. When these ships made landfall, cats often went ashore, some deliberately carried as gifts or mascots, others slipping away to explore new shores. In this way, cats reached the Americas with Columbus's voyages in 1492 and those that followed. They arrived in the Caribbean, along the coasts of what is now Mexico and Peru, and later with English and French settlers in North America. In Australia, cats came with the first fleet in 1788, patting down gangplanks onto a continent where no felines had existed before. In each new place, they adapted swiftly, hunting local rodents and small creatures, their descendants eventually giving rise to distinctive regional populations. The 17th and 18th centuries brought cats deeper into domestic life in Europe and its colonies. As cities grew and middle classes emerged, keeping a cat became a mark of modest comfort rather than mere utility. In prosperous homes, cats were given names, fed scraps from the table, and allowed to sleep on chairs or beds. Portrait painters included them as symbols of domestic tranquility. A tabby resting on a lady's lap in a Dutch interior, or a sleek black cat gazing out a window in a French salon. Literature began to notice them more fondly. Samuel Johnson's Cat Hodge was so beloved that the great lexicographer fed him oysters by hand, declaring him a very fine cat indeed. Scientific curiosity also turned toward cats during the Enlightenment. Naturalists observed their anatomy, reflexes, and behaviors with growing precision. The French naturalist Georges Louis Leclerc, Comte de Buffon, included detailed descriptions of cats in his monumental Histoire naturelle, noting their agility, independence, and subtle variations in coat and temperament. Early breeders in Europe and the Ottoman Empire began paying attention to aesthetics, selecting for particular colors or patterns. The tortoiseshell and white calico cats, often female due to genetics, became especially prized in some circles for their striking patchwork coats. In the Islamic world and South Asia, cats continued to enjoy high regard. Mughal emperors in India kept elegant, long-haired cats in their courts, some descended from Persian lines prized for their luxurious fur. Ottoman households in Istanbul maintained the tradition of community cats, strays fed and cared for by entire neighborhoods, a practice that persists in parts of Turkey to this day. Mosques and bazaars remained open to them, their presence considered a quiet blessing. The Industrial Revolution of the late 18th and 19th centuries reshaped life once more, yet cats adapted with characteristic ease. Factories, warehouses, and railway depots, full of grain, textiles, and stored goods, needed protection from vermin more than ever. Factory cats became common, fed by workers and tolerated by owners because they saved money on lost stock. In Victorian England, the rise of the middle class brought cats indoors as true pets. Queen Victoria herself was fond of them, keeping several in the royal residences and helping popularize the idea of cats as affectionate companions rather than mere workers. The 19th century also saw the first organized cat shows. The inaugural one took place in London in 1871 at the Crystal Palace, organized by Harrison Weir, an artist and cat enthusiast. Owners paraded their finest specimens, Persians with their flattened faces and long fur, Siamese with their striking blue eyes and vocal nature, sleek British short hairs. Judges awarded ribbons for color, pattern, conformation, and temperament. These events sparked interest in selective breeding, gradually creating the distinct breeds we recognize today. Pedigree cats remained rare and expensive, but the shows helped shift public perception. Cats were no longer just useful. They could be beautiful, aristocratic, worthy of admiration. Through all these changes, voyages across stormy seas, revolutions in thought and industry, the quiet refinement of home life, cats retained their essential nature. They hunted when hungry, rested when content, offered warmth and companionship without demand. A sailor far from home might find solace in a ship's cat's steady gaze. A factory worker returning weary at dusk might smile at the familiar form waiting by the door. A child in a crowded city tenement might fall asleep to the soft rumble of a purr against their cheek. Let these images rest gently in your mind. The silhouette of a cat on a ship's rail under a vast starry sky, the flicker of gaslight on a Victorian parlor where a Persian dozes on velvet, the murmur of voices at a Crystal Palace show as judges lift a proud Siamese for inspection. Time flowed onward, carrying cats ever closer to the intimate role they hold in so many lives today. The early decades of the 20th century brought profound changes to how people lived with cats. World wars disrupted homes and cities, yet cats adapted with their usual quiet resilience. In bomb shelters during the Blitz in London, stray cats curled beside frightened families, their steady purring a small anchor amid the thunder of falling bombs. In rural areas, they guarded victory gardens from rabbits and mice, helping stretch meager rations. Post-war suburban expansion in the United States, Europe, and elsewhere created new kinds of homes, detached houses with gardens, garages, and sunlit windowsills perfect for a cat to bask. For the first time on a wide scale, many cats became strictly indoor animals, their world shrinking to the safe boundaries of a single household, yet expanding in affection and attention. Veterinary medicine advanced rapidly during these years. Spaying and neutering became routine, reducing unwanted litters and allowing cats to live longer, healthier lives. Vaccines against feline distemper and other diseases appeared, while better nutrition, commercial cat foods formulated with balanced proteins, taurine, and vitamins, replaced scraps and table food. Lifespans lengthened from an average of perhaps 8 to 10 years in the early 1900s to 12 to 15 or more by the late 20th century. Cats that once roamed freely now enjoyed protected environments, though many still slipped out to explore when opportunity arose. The mid-20th century also saw the rise of pedigree breeding on a larger scale. Cat fancies organized internationally. The Cat Fanciers Association in the United States, founded 1906 but growing strongly after World War II, the governing council of the cat fancy in Britain, and similar bodies elsewhere. New breeds emerged or were refined. The elegant Burmese, the playful Abyssinian with its ticked coat reminiscent of ancient Egyptian cats, the sturdy Maine Coon said to descend from ship cats that survived harsh New England winters, the hairless Sphinx developed through careful breeding of spontaneous mutations. Each breed carried stories of accidental discoveries, dedicated breeders, and the slow sculpting of form and temperament to suit human preferences. Yet most cats remained mixed-breed domestics, their coats displaying endless combinations of tabby stripes, solid colors, tortoiseshell patterns, and white patches. These ordinary cats, often acquired as strays or free-to-good-home kittens, filled shelters, backyards, and apartments. They taught generations of children responsibility, feeding, brushing, gentle play, and offered uncomplicated love in return. In literature and popular culture, cats appeared more warmly. T.S. Eliot's whimsical Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, 1939, gave voice to their secret society. Later, animated characters like Sylvester, Garfield, and Felix brought them into living rooms via television and comics, turning their quirks into shared jokes. The late 20th century ushered in an era of unprecedented closeness. As families grew smaller and people lived alone more often, cats became ideal companions, low maintenance yet affectionate, independent yet cuddly when the mood struck. Studies began to show measurable benefits, lowered blood pressure in owners who stroked a purring cat, reduced stress hormones, even improved recovery rates after illness or surgery. Cats visited hospitals and nursing homes in organized programs, sitting calmly on laps while elderly hands remembered long-ago pets. Their presence soothed anxiety in ways words sometimes could not. Then came the internet. In the 1990s and early 2000s, digital cameras and online forums allowed cat lovers to share photos instantly. message boards filled with tales of clever rescues, funny behaviors, and adorable kittens. The phenomenon exploded with the rise of social media in the late 2000s and 2010s. A single photograph of a cat named Tartar Sauce, better known as Grumpy Cat, in 2012 became a global sensation, spawning memes, merchandise, and millions of views. Videos of cats knocking objects off tables, fitting into impossibly small boxes, or simply staring with unblinking intensity went viral by the billions. Platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok turned ordinary house cats into celebrities. Lil Bub with her dwarfism and perpetual kitten-like face, Colonel Meow with the longest fur ever recorded, Nala with her enormous eyes and gentle demeanor. These digital cats did more than entertain, they built communities. People who felt isolated found connection through shared stories of loss, adoption, and joy. Rescue organizations used social media to rehome thousands of cats, raising awareness about spaying, neutering, indoor living, and the plight of strays. Crowdfunding campaigns saved shelters and funded medical care for special needs felines. The internet reminded the world that cats, for all their aloof reputation, inspire fierce loyalty and deep emotion. Today, in the early 21st century, cats hold a unique place. More households in many countries have cats than dogs, partly because they suit busy, urban lifestyles with apartments and long work hours. They live indoors almost exclusively in developed regions, entertained by puzzle feeders, climbing trees, and window perches overlooking bird-filled gardens. Technology follows them. GPS collars track adventurous outdoor cats, automatic litter boxes ease daily care, cameras let owners watch their pets while away. Yet the ancient essence endures. A modern cat still crouches low before pouncing on a toy mouse, just as its wild ancestors stalked prey in the Fertile Crescent. It still chooses when to offer affection, curling against a warm leg on a cold evening, or pressing its forehead to a human hand in silent greeting. It still purrs at frequencies that promote healing in bones and tissues, a trait carried unchanged from those first Near Eastern wildcats. Let these final layers rest lightly upon you, the glow of a phone screen illuminating a cat sprawled across a keyboard, the soft click of a camera capturing a yawn that becomes a million likes, the quiet moment when a hand strokes fur and worries dissolve for a while. Cats have walked with us through every age, wild hunters turned gentle companions, sacred guardians turned internet icons, always on their own terms, always offering exactly what we need in the moment we need it most. One of the most remarkable aspects of cats' ancient story lies in how little their core nature has shifted over millennia. Genetic research reveals that domestic cats carry remarkably few changes from their wild ancestors. Perhaps only a dozen or so key genes differ, mostly related to tameness, coat patterns, and a slight reduction in fearfulness around humans. This means a modern house cat retains almost the same instincts, senses, and behaviors as those first wildcats that wandered near Neolithic granaries. Their acute hearing detects the faintest rustle of a mouse from meters away. Their whiskers, called vibrissae, sense air currents and help them navigate tight spaces in total darkness. Their retractable claws and flexible spines allow leaps and twists that still astonish us today. In the Fertile Crescent, where agriculture first took root around 12,000 years ago, the partnership began not with deliberate capture but with opportunity. Humans stored surplus grain in mud brick silos and woven baskets. Mice followed the bounty, cats followed the mice. This self-selection process, cats choosing proximity to reliable food sources, explains why domestication unfolded so gradually and peacefully compared to dogs or livestock. Cats never needed to lose their solitary hunting drive, they simply redirected it toward pests that threatened human survival. Archaeological whispers from Cyprus around 9,500 years ago offer one of the earliest tangible signs of emotional connection. The deliberate burial of a human with a young cat, positioned close, perhaps with the cat's head resting near the person's arm, suggests mourning, companionship, or even ritual significance. The cat had been transported to the island, likely by boat, indicating humans already valued them enough to carry them across water rather than let them fend for themselves. When cats reached ancient Egypt, their status elevated dramatically. Beyond mere utility, they became intertwined with cosmology. The sun god Ra was sometimes depicted as a cat slaying the serpent Apophis each night to ensure dawn's return, a powerful metaphor for protection against chaos. Temples to Bastet housed living cats that roamed sacred precincts, accepted offerings from visitors, and were cared for by dedicated attendants. When a cat died, families shaved their eyebrows in grief, mourned for days, and sometimes mummified the body with elaborate wrappings, amulets, and even small mouse offerings for the afterlife. Vast necropolises near Bubastes contain hundreds of thousands of these mummies, many carefully preserved with resins and linen, showing the depth of reverence. As Roman influence spread cats along trade routes and military paths, they encountered varied receptions. In some parts of the empire, they were linked to the goddess Diana or Libertas, symbols of independence and freedom. Mosaics from Pompeii depict cats in everyday scenes, lounging in courtyards, watching over kitchens, blending seamlessly into domestic life. Yet Romans also used ferrets or weasels for pest control in some regions, so cats were appreciated more for grace than necessity. The medieval period brought contrasts. While monasteries quietly relied on cats to protect irreplaceable manuscripts, some scribes even left notes praising their mousers. Superstitions arose in parts of Europe. During the Black Death, fear linked black cats to witchcraft or plague carriers in isolated incidents, leading to sporadic persecutions. Yet in many places, cats remained essential and beloved. Islamic societies continued traditions of kindness, inspired by stories of the Prophet's gentle treatment of Musa, and Japanese folklore wove cats into tales of protection and prosperity. The seafaring centuries added layers of legend. Sailors across cultures, from Vikings to Portuguese explorers to British naval crews, regarded a ship's cat as essential crew. Some believed a cat washing behind its ears predicted rain. Others thought a sneezing cat aboard foretold storms. When vessels reached distant shores, cats often escaped or were released, establishing feral populations that adapted to new ecosystems, from the Americas to Australia, sometimes interbreeding with local wildcats or simply thriving as skilled survivors. In the Victorian era, cats transitioned more visibly into symbols of refinement. Queen Victoria's affection for them helped popularize indoor keeping and selective breeding. The 1871 Crystal Palace show marked a turning point. Persians with their long, luxurious coats and flat faces, Siamese with their vocal personalities and vivid blue eyes, began to be prized for aesthetics as much as function. These events sparked a hobby that continues today, with breed standards evolving slowly over generations. The digital age brought an explosion of visibility. Early online communities in the 1990s shared grainy photos. By the 2000s, lolcats and captioned images spread humor through simple, playful language. Viral stars like Grumpy Cat in 2012 demonstrated how a single expressive face could capture global attention, leading to merchandise, books, and even scientific curiosity about why cat content evokes such strong positive responses, often linked to feelings of comfort, nostalgia, and stress relief. Throughout, cats have offered a unique form of companionship, never fully dependent, yet capable of profound bonds. Their purr, vibrating at frequencies between 25 and 150 Hz, promotes tissue healing and bone density in both cats and the humans who hear it. Studies show that simply watching cat videos or interacting with a cat can lower cortisol levels and increase oxytocin, mirroring the calming effects of petting a dog but with less demand on the owner. These threads weave together a history not of conquest or command, but of quiet mutual choice. Cats selected us as much as we selected them, drawn by food, warmth, safety, and in return offered pest control, companionship, and an enduring reminder that some relationships thrive on independence and gentle affection. Let these added reflections settle softly now, enriching the tapestry without overwhelming it. The long story of cats rests complete in its gentle cycles, from wild hunters to sacred guardians, seafaring mascots to digital muses, and always, quiet companions through every human era. As the serene reflections on cats' timeless essence and gentle cycles settle like a soft blanket over the mind, we now drift once more through the quiet corridors of their history, uncovering even finer threads, subtle anecdotes, overlooked moments, and enduring curiosities that add richer color to the tapestry without repeating what has come before. Let these additional whispers from the past flow slowly, like a distant stream heard in the night, guiding you deeper into peaceful rest. Consider the remarkable voyage of a single cat during the height of naval warfare in the early 20th century. Amid the chaos of the Atlantic in 1941, a black and white patched feline named Oscar survived the sinking of 3 different warships, the Bismarck, the Cossack, and the Ark Royal, earning the nickname Unsinkable Sam. Each time, rescuers found him clinging to debris, wet but composed, his green eyes steady amid the wreckage. Sailors across fleets shared tales of his survival, seeing in him a symbol of quiet endurance. He lived out his days ashore in a sailor's home, a living reminder that cats, when fate tests them, often land on their feet with unruffled dignity. In the hushed halls of great institutions, cats have long served as silent wardens. For 20 years, from the late 19th to the early 20th century, a tabby named Mike guarded the entrance of the British Museum in London. He sat on the porter's desk, accepting scratches from scholars and visitors alike, his presence so beloved that when he passed in 1929, newspapers across the world published obituaries, mourning the loss of a feline who had welcomed generations into the house of knowledge. His story echoes the role cats have played in libraries and scriptoria for centuries, protecting fragile pages from nibbling teeth while offering a moment of warmth to those bent over ancient texts. Presidents and leaders, too, have found solace in feline company during turbulent times. Abraham Lincoln, amid the burdens of civil war, received 2 cats as gifts and named them Tabby and Dixie. He was known to sneak them tidbits under the table during formal dinners, once remarking with gentle humor that if a gold fork was suitable for a former president, it was surely fine for Tabby. In quieter moments at the White House, he would speak to them softly, finding in their independent affection a brief respite from the weight of decisions. Farther back, in the courts of 17th-century France, Cardinal Richelieu, chief minister to Louis XIII, kept a collection of 14 cats in his chambers, pampering them with velvet cushions and special meals. He named them with care Salmise, Lucifer, Gazette, and arranged for their care even after his passing, a testament to how deeply these animals could touch even the most powerful hearts. Across oceans and eras, cats have ventured where few animals dare. In 1963, a street cat from Paris named Félicette became the first feline to travel into space. Selected from strays and trained for the French space program, she endured a suborbital flight, returning safely to Earth after 15 minutes above the atmosphere. Though her journey was brief, it opened paths for understanding how living beings cope with weightlessness, her calm demeanor during recovery a quiet echo of the resilience cats have shown since their first steps near human fires. In quieter, more whimsical corners of history, cats have inspired invention. Sir Isaac Newton, the physicist who unraveled gravity, is credited with creating one of the earliest cat flaps, small swinging doors cut into his study so his pets could come and go without disturbing his work. This simple device, born of affection, spread through homes and barns, allowing cats freedom while preserving human peace. Folklore from distant lands adds its own soft notes. In Thailand, Buddhist monks composed the Tamara Miu, or cat book poems, between the 14th and 18th centuries, describing natural breeds like the graceful Siamese with poetic reverence. These verses celebrated cats as bearers of good fortune, their colors and patterns interpreted as omens or blessings, a tradition that influenced how people viewed and cared for them in temples and households. Even in modern times, unusual bonds have captured attention. An orange tabby named Stubbs served as honorary mayor of Talkeetna, Alaska, for 20 years starting in 1997, elected uncontested, loved by locals and tourists who left treats at the general store where he held office. He wore no badge but carried the town's affection in his easy strolls and tolerant gaze. These scattered stories, survivors of shipwrecks, museum guardians, presidential confidants, space travelers, inventors' muses, poetic subjects, honorary mayors, remind us that cats slip into human history not with fanfare but with persistent, understated presence. They appear in the margins of great events, offering comfort, protection, or simple companionship when most needed, their independence a gentle counterpoint to our busier lives. Let these finer details drift now into the quiet spaces of your thoughts, the steady green eyes of a cat on storm-tossed debris, the soft thud of paws on museum stone, the low purr in a leader's private room, the brief weightlessness of a feline explorer among the stars. Each moment adds to the long, unbroken chain of affinity between our species. As the delicate threads of remarkable feline tales, from unsinkable survivors to museum sentinels, continue to weave softly through the night, we now linger a little longer in these hidden corners of history, drawing out more gentle, lesser-known moments that reveal the quiet influence cats have held across time. Let the words drift like moonlight on still water, each one adding a subtle glow to the familiar story without haste or repetition. In the shadowed ruins of ancient Rome, cats found a city that suited their independent spirit perfectly. Long after their arrival via trade ships from Egypt and the Near East, perhaps as early as the 5th century before our era, they roamed freely among temples, forums, and villas. Romans valued them not only for keeping granaries and warehouses clear of rodents, but also for their symbolic ties to freedom. Some linked them to Libertas, the goddess of liberty, portraying her with a cat at her side to represent untamed self-reliance. Archaeological finds, small bones in Roman settlements across Italy, Britain, and Gaul, show how cats traveled with legions, padding along supply lines to protect stored food from pests that could weaken an army. In the bustling ports of Ostia or the quiet countryside estates, they were allowed to wander rooftops and courtyards, their presence a subtle reminder that not all alliances require chains. During the Middle Ages in certain regions, laws reflected this enduring respect. In 10th century Wales, King Hywel Dda included protections for cats in his legal code, setting fines for harming them, higher for a hunting cat than for one merely kept for companionship, acknowledging their practical worth in safeguarding stored harvests. In the wool-rich city of Ypres, cats were seasonally herded into the cloth hall's upper floors each spring to control vermin infesting stored fabrics. Though later traditions turned this into a grim festival, the original purpose was purely protective, a communal reliance on feline skill. World wars tested cats in ways both poignant and extraordinary. During the First World War, a tortoiseshell named Pitucci became a mascot aboard a Belgian trench fortress near the front lines. Adopted as a kitten, she alerted soldiers to incoming gas attacks by arching her back and hissing at the first whiff of danger, saving lives in the claustrophobic underground. In the Second World War, beyond the well-known unsinkable Sam, another feline named Faith guarded St. Augustine's Church in London through the Blitz. When bombs rained down in September 1940, she carried her kitten Panda to the basement for safety. After the church was destroyed, rescuers found them unharmed amid the rubble, Faith refusing to leave until both were safe. Her story spread as a symbol of quiet courage, earning her a medal from the PDSA Animal Charity. In quieter diplomatic shadows, cats have played unexpected roles. In the 1960s, during Cold War tensions, 2 Siamese cats in the Dutch embassy in Moscow repeatedly pawed at walls and meowed insistently. Their persistent behavior led staff to discover hidden Soviet listening devices embedded behind the plaster. The cat's sharp hearing had detected faint electronic sounds humans missed. Their alerts prompted swift repairs and frustrated the eavesdroppers, turning feline curiosity into accidental counter-espionage. Even in the realm of science and exploration, cats ventured where few expected. beyond Feliset's suborbital flight in 1963, where electrodes monitored her vital signs as she floated briefly in space. Earlier experiments in the 1950s used cats to study balance and motion sickness, strapping them into rotating chairs to understand how inner ears adapt to zero gravity. These studies, though clinical, helped pave safer paths for human astronauts, with cats' natural grace in falls and recoveries providing valuable data. In more whimsical historical footnotes, figures of renown left traces of their fondness. Cardinal Richelieu's 14 pampered cats lived in luxury at his Paris residence, each with a name and dedicated attendants. He ensured provisions for them after his death in 1642. Sir Isaac Newton's affection extended to practical invention. He reportedly modified his study door with 2 openings, one large for his cat, one small for her kittens, though the kittens soon used the larger one anyway, a gentle reminder of feline ingenuity over human planning. Across distant shores in 19th-century Crimean War trenches, a gray cat named Tom kept British soldiers company during the siege of Sevastopol. Well-fed amid starving men, he led them to hidden pigeon roosts, becoming known as Crimean Tom, and later stuffed and displayed as a memento of shared hardship. In modern echoes, a calico named Tama served as station master at Kishi Station in Japan from 2007 until her passing in 2015, wearing a tiny uniform cap and drawing tourists who left offerings, her role boosting local economy and reviving a fading rail line through sheer feline charm. These scattered, soft-spoken episodes, from Roman rooftops to wartime basements, embassy walls to space capsules, illustrate how cats have slipped into the interstices of human endeavor. They guard without fanfare, comfort without demand, alert without command, their presence a steady undercurrent through triumph, trial, and ordinary days alike. Let these additional glimpses rest now like warm embers in the quiet dark, the hiss of a trench cat sensing danger, the insistent paw at a hidden microphone, the calm return of a space traveler, the tiny cap on a station master's head. Each adds its gentle weight to the long, unbroken companionship. In the sun-drenched islands of the Mediterranean, cats have long held a special, almost mythic place. On the Greek island of Mykonos, for generations locals have left bowls of water and scraps near whitewashed chapels for the island's free-roaming felines. These cats, descendants of ancient seafaring arrivals, climb stone walls, nap in the shade of bougainvillea, and greet ferries with lazy stretches. Tourists often mistake their abundance for a modern quirk, but the habit traces back centuries, perhaps to Byzantine times when monasteries kept cats to protect grain tithes and illuminated manuscripts from rodents. Similar scenes play out on Santorini, where black cats with golden eyes are said to bring good fortune to fishermen, their presence on boats considered a ward against storms. The islanders rarely claim ownership. Instead, the cats belong to the place itself, moving freely between tavernas, alleys, and cliffside homes, accepted as part of the landscape like the wind or the sea. Farther east, in the narrow lanes of Istanbul, the tradition of community cats reaches an almost poetic scale. Since Ottoman times, strays have been fed by shopkeepers, bakers, and passers-by alike. Mosques maintain small feeding stations, fishmongers set aside scraps, even tourists now leave treats near historic sites. This culture of care stems partly from religious teachings emphasizing kindness to animals, partly from practical recognition that cats keep streets cleaner by controlling rats. In recent decades, the city has become famous for its feline residents, thousands living in harmony with humans, photographed sleeping on ancient walls, riding ferries across the Bosphorus, or basking in the Hagia Sophia's courtyards. Each cat has its favorite bench, its chosen cafe, its human admirers who know it by name. The relationship feels ancient yet timeless. No leashes, no demands, only mutual tolerance and quiet affection. In the colder reaches of Scandinavia, cats adapted to harsher conditions with characteristic resilience. During the Viking Age, as longships plied the North Sea and Baltic routes, Cats were carried not just for pest control, but sometimes as talismans. Norse sagas occasionally mention skogcat, forest cats, wilder cousins that interbred with shipboard domestics, contributing to the sturdy, thick-furred Norwegian forest cat breed we recognize today. These cats, with their tufted ears and water-repellent coats, thrived in snowy farmsteads and coastal villages, curling beside hearths while blizzards raged outside. Farmers valued them highly. A good mouser could mean the difference between a family starving or surviving winter. Folk beliefs held that cats could see spirits or predict weather. When one washed its face vigorously, rain was said to follow. When it sat with its back to the fire, a storm approached. Such superstitions blended practicality with wonder, ensuring cats were treated with respect even in remote homesteads. Across the Atlantic in colonial America, cats arrived with the earliest settlers. On the Mayflower in 1620, at least one cat is documented in passenger accounts, likely a tabby brought to protect stored grain from rats during the long crossing. As colonies grew, cats spread inland with pioneers, guarding log cabins, barns, and frontier stores. In the 1700s, Benjamin Franklin kept several cats at his Philadelphia home, one famously named King of the Cats for its regal demeanor. During the Revolutionary War, cats helped preserve food supplies in encampments. Soldiers shared rations with them, seeing their presence as a small comfort amid hardship. Later in the gold rush era of the 1840s and 1850s, cats traveled west in covered wagons, their litters borne under canvas while families chased dreams across plains and mountains. Mining towns soon overflowed with felines, some working in saloons and assay offices, others simply curling on porches, offering companionship to lonely prospectors. The industrial boom of the late 19th and early 20th centuries created new niches for cats. In textile mills of Lancashire and New England, where looms clattered day and night, cats patrolled beneath machinery to catch mice that could jam threads or spoil yarn. Factory owners sometimes paid mouser wages in milk or meat scraps. Workers named them and mourned when age or accident claimed them. In shipyards along the Clyde or in Boston Harbor, cats lived aboard half-built vessels, keeping rats from nesting in unfinished holds. Dock workers fed them fish heads, believing a well-fed cat brought luck to launches. These working cats were tough, scarred from fights, yet many developed loyal bonds with particular crews, waiting at the gate for familiar footsteps at shift's end. In the realm of literature, cats have inspired writers across eras with their enigmatic grace. Mark Twain adored them, once declaring, "When a man loves cats, I am his friend and comrade without further introduction." He kept as many as 11 at his Connecticut home, naming them after figures from history and myth. Ernest Hemingway famously welcomed polydactyl extra-toed cats to his Key West estate. Descendants of those original six-toed felines still roam the grounds today, cared for as living heritage. Colette, the French novelist, wrote tenderly of her cats Saha and Kiki la Doucette, portraying them as complex beings with inner lives worthy of respect. T.S. Eliot's whimsical verses in Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats gave each feline a secret name known only to itself, a poetic nod to their independent souls. Even in the quiet world of art conservation, cats have played guardian roles. In the 1980s and 1990s, the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg maintained a small colony of cats to protect priceless canvases and tapestries from rodents. The tradition dates back to Catherine the Great, who reportedly admired cats' cleanliness and precision. Today, the museum's felines, still fed and vaccinated, are celebrated with their own Day of the Cat, complete with treats and public viewing. Similar programs exist in the Louvre, where cats once roamed the basements, and the State Tretiakov Gallery in Moscow, blending ancient utility with modern affection. These additional glimpses, from Mediterranean rooftops to Viking hearths, frontier wagons to factory floors, writers' studies to museum corridors, reveal how cats have threaded themselves into every layer of human experience. They adapt without losing their essence, watchful yet affectionate, solitary yet social when it suits them, always present in the spaces we leave open. Their history is not one of dramatic conquest, but of persistent, understated partnership, paws padding softly beside our louder footsteps through every age. Let these finer details settle now like dust motes in a sunbeam. The black cat stretching on a Mykonos chapel step, the Norwegian forest cat curled against a snow-dusted window, the polydactyl descendant sunning itself on Hemingway's porch, the hermitage cat leaping gracefully over a velvet rope. Each moment reinforces the gentle truth that cats have chosen to walk with us, offering their quiet company across millennia. In the sun-baked villages of rural Spain and Portugal, cats have long occupied a liminal space between house and street. During the centuries of Moorish influence and the subsequent Reconquista, felines moved freely through tiled patios and narrow alleys, their presence welcomed as both practical and almost spiritual. In Andalusian homes, a common custom was to leave a small saucer of milk on the windowsill each evening, not always for a specific cat, but for whichever one chose to visit. This offering was seen as a quiet act of hospitality toward creatures that kept granaries and olive stores safe from rats that could ruin an entire season's harvest. In some villages, older women still recall their grandmothers whispering that a black cat crossing the threshold at dusk brought protection against the evil eye, while a white one arriving at dawn promised gentle news. These beliefs, woven from centuries of coexistence, ensured that cats were rarely chased away. Instead, they were greeted with a soft cluck of the tongue or a murmured "ven, pequeño," as they slipped inside to curl near the hearth. Further north, in the misty highlands of Scotland and the rugged islands of the Outer Hebrides, the native wildcat, Felis sylvestris grampia, occasionally interbred with domestic arrivals brought by traders or crofters. The resulting hybrids, larger, more muscular, with bolder stripes, became legendary in local storytelling. Crofters depended on them to protect stored barley and dried fish from rodents during long winters when every grain counted. Folk tales from the 18th and 19th centuries speak of Cailleach Nan Cat, Old Woman of the Cats, who could summon feline guardians to ward off fairies or thieves. While most were practical farm workers, a few developed reputations as almost supernatural. One cat from the Isle of Skye was said to have warned a family of an approaching landslide by yowling at the door until they fled. The house was buried the next morning. Whether fact or embellished memory, such stories underscore how deeply cats were woven into the rhythm of survival in isolated places. On the vast steppes and in the yurt-dotted landscapes of Central Asia, cats arrived later, likely via Silk Road caravans carrying Persian and Chinese influences. In Kazakh and Mongolian nomadic communities, they were valued not so much for hunting in open grasslands, where prey was too swift, but for protecting felt stores, dried meat caches, and precious saddlebags from mice during winter encampments. A good camp cat was passed down through families like a treasured tool. Children learned early to share milk from mare's udders or goat's teats with the feline that kept vermin from spoiling the winter provisions. In some oral traditions, cats were linked to protective spirits. A tabby sleeping near a newborn was believed to absorb any malevolent energy directed at the child. Even today, in remote areas, herders will pause to stroke a visiting cat, murmuring thanks for its silent work. In the humid river deltas and rice paddies of Southeast Asia, particularly Vietnam, Thailand, and parts of Indonesia, cats developed a reputation as guardians of sacred spaces. Buddhist and animist traditions often viewed them as intermediaries between worlds. In Vietnamese villages along the Mekong, temples kept resident cats believed to carry away bad luck when they wandered at night and returned at dawn. Fishermen along the coast sometimes took cats aboard small wooden boats, not just for rats, but because their sure-footed balance on pitching decks was thought to steady the vessel's luck. A cat that chose to stay aboard for an entire season was considered a mark of favor from the sea spirits. In Thailand, beyond the famous Siamese breed once reserved for royalty, ordinary village cats were, and still are, fed at spirit houses, small shrines placed outside homes to appease local guardians. The cats' calm acceptance of offerings placed at their feet reinforced the belief that they shared a kinship with unseen protectors. Across the islands of the Pacific, cats arrived with European explorers and whalers in the 18th and 19th centuries. On Hawaii, introduced in the 1790s by Captain Vancouver's ships, they quickly adapted to volcanic slopes and coastal villages. Hunting introduced rats that threatened native bird populations, though this later created ecological tension. Hawaiian families incorporated them into daily life. Some elders recall childhood stories of Popoki, from the English poor pussy, who warned of approaching lava flows by fleeing uphill en masse. In Polynesian oral histories from Samoa and Tonga, cats brought by missionaries became symbols of quiet endurance, animals that survived long sea voyages and then thrived in new island homes without complaint. In the high plateaus of the Andes, particularly in Peru and Bolivia, cats reached indigenous communities via Spanish colonial trade in the 16th and 17th centuries. Quechua and Aymara farmers welcomed them to protect stored quinoa, potatoes, and dried chuño from rodents during the harsh Altiplano winters. In some villages near Lake Titicaca, cats were given names tied to Incan cosmology, Inti for a sunny-colored one, Mama Quilla for a silver-gray female, blending Old World arrival with New World reverence. Their role was so vital that during times of scarcity, families sometimes prioritized feeding the household cat over other animals, knowing its hunting preserved far more food than it consumed. Even in the dense urban fabric of 19th-century Shanghai and Hong Kong, cats carved out territories amid crowded tenements and bustling markets. As treaty ports opened to Western trade, both European ship cats and local Chinese felines mingled, producing distinctive coat patterns still seen today. Merchants kept them in warehouses filled with tea, silk, and porcelain to guard against rats that could destroy valuable cargo. In alleyway homes, cats slept on Kang-style heated platforms in winter, purring beside families who shared rice porridge or fish scraps. During the turbulent decades of revolution and war in the 20th century, stray cats became quiet survivors, scavenging in bombed-out districts yet returning to familiar doorsteps when peace briefly returned. These far-flung regional echoes, from Andalusian windowsills to Andean quinoa stores, Polynesian fishing boats to Shanghai alleyways, remind us that cats have never been confined to one culture or continent. Wherever humans settled and stored food, built shelters, or crossed seas, cats followed, not forced, but drawn by opportunity, and then held by mutual benefit and growing affection. Their adaptability is silent poetry. The same basic instincts that served Near Eastern wildcats near granaries 10,000 years ago still serve island cats on volcanic slopes or highland cats beside yurts. In countless small ways, they continue teaching the same lesson across every latitude and epoch. Presence matters more than possession, quiet companionship outlasts loud declarations, and a soft purr in the dark can feel like the most reliable constant the world offers. Let these additional textures rest now, layer upon gentle layer. The saucer of milk left on a Spanish windowsill at dusk, the thick-furred Norwegian cat blinking at snow through a frosted pane, the Mekong temple cat slipping away under starlight to carry off misfortune, the Hawaiian Popoki fleeing uphill before lava awakens, the Shanghai alley cat leaping between tenement roofs after a long day of watching over tea crates. Each image reinforces the same serene truth. Cats have padded beside humanity in every kind of place, under every kind of sky, through every kind of season. Cats have never demanded center stage. They slip into the frame at the edges, perched on a windowsill watching rain trace patterns on glass, curled in the curve of an empty armchair long after the room has gone still, stretching in a single shaft of late afternoon sun that somehow always finds them no matter where the furniture has been rearranged. Through every century covered in these parts, the same essential gesture repeats. A slow blink offered as trust, a forehead pressed briefly to a human hand in silent greeting, a purr starting so low it is felt before it is heard. That purr oscillating most comfortably between 25 and 150 cycles per second, carries the same healing frequencies whether it rises in a Neolithic dwelling near the Jordan River, a Viking longship rocking on the North Sea, a Victorian sickroom lit by gaslight, or a 21st century apartment where someone scrolls through cat videos at 3 in the morning to quiet an anxious mind. The miracle is not how much cats have changed, it is how little. Strip away the pedigree names, the show ribbons, the internet fame, the veterinary advances, the memes, and you still find the same animal that first chose proximity to human grain stores because the hunting was easier and the winters warmer. The same upright ears that swivel toward the smallest sound, the same vertical pupils that open wide in twilight, the same rough tongue that grooms both itself and, on rare, treasured occasions, the hand that feeds it. Every modern house cat carries inside its small body the unbroken lineage of those first Near Eastern wildcats, a living continuity that spans continents, empires, plagues, voyages, revolutions, and digital screens without ever needing to announce itself. And yet they have announced themselves, quietly, in countless private ways. A child's first word might be the name given to the family kitten rather than mama. An elderly person in a care home might speak more readily to the visiting therapy cat than to the staff. Someone grieving a loss might find the only bearable company is the one that asks nothing, simply stays. In hospitals, cats have been brought where rules allow to sit beside patients recovering from surgery, their presence lowering heart rates more reliably than some medications. In classrooms designed for children with autism, a calm resident cat often becomes the safest bridge to human interaction. These are not grand public stories. They are the small, daily miracles that never make headlines yet happen thousands of times every hour somewhere on Earth. The geography of cats today is almost dizzying in its reach. Feral colonies thrive on the industrial outskirts of megacities and on uninhabited sub-Antarctic islands alike. Stray populations in Rome's ancient ruins mingle with tourists taking selfies. Roof cats in Lisbon leap between terracotta tiles with the nonchalance of acrobats who have never known fear of falling. In Tokyo's narrow residential lanes, cats wear reflective collars and pose for neighborhood Instagram accounts run by elderly residents who treat each one like a grandchild. In rural Argentina, gauchos still keep barn cats descended from 19th century imports, animals as tough and laconic as the cowboys themselves. On fishing boats off the coast of Senegal, cats ride out storms curled inside coils of net, emerging only when the catch is hauled aboard. Wherever people live, store food, build shelters, or simply sit still long enough to notice the world, cats appear, sometimes invited, sometimes self-appointed, and stay. What they ask in return is minimal: a corner that is theirs, food when they are hungry, a lap or a sunbeam when they want warmth, and the freedom to leave again when the mood strikes. In exchange, they give pest control that saves countless tons of grain and fabric every year, companionship that demands no conversation, humor that arrives in sudden, absurd dashes across rooms, beauty in the curve of a tail or the precise geometry of whiskers, and most mysteriously, a form of forgiveness. A cat does not hold grudges for a late meal, a moved scratching post, or an absence of days. It simply reclaims its place when you return, as though no time has passed. So we come full circle, not to the beginning of domestication, but to the beginning of tonight's telling, the same soft-footed choice made over and over across 12,000 years. Cats did not need us to survive. We needed them, and then we learned to want them, and then we learned to love them in ways that surprise us still. The relationship remains asymmetrical in the most comforting sense. They can walk away at any moment, yet so often they do not. Let that knowledge rest now, heavy and light at once, like a cat settling its full weight across your chest while you lie in the dark. Feel the slow rise and fall of its breathing matching yours. Hear the engine of its purr deepen until it vibrates through bone and muscle, smoothing the jagged edges of whatever thoughts still linger before sleep. The history is finished for this evening, yet it is never truly finished. Tomorrow, or next week, or 10 years from now, another cat somewhere will blink slowly at its person, and the ancient contract will renew itself without words. Rest completely. Let every paw print from every era fade gently into the same quiet darkness. The cats are still out there, on rooftops, in barns, on laps, in alleys, on ships that no longer sail, in temples that still stand, in videos that loop endlessly, doing what they have always done, choosing again and again to be near. If this gentle history helped you drift towards sleep, I would love to hear from you. Please consider subscribing to Sleepy History Past for more long, soothing narrations designed to carry you peacefully into rest. Leave a comment below, tell us where in the world you are listening from tonight, your city, your country, even just the kind of night it is where you are. Your words help the channel grow and remind everyone that these quiet stories are shared across time zones, borders, and sleepless nights. Wherever you are, whatever the hour, may a soft purr find its way into your dreams. Good night.